Hey, YouTube and independent learners. Great to have you join us for this little conversation on how to get your homeschooler to hate homeschool. So, it's really pretty easy. And I want to tell you, even though you might try this, if you wanted them to, obviously, we're trying to get you to think backwards about this because you don't want them to hate homeschool. And there are some kids, no matter what you do to them, it's like the little experiment they talked about, the psychologist that put these twins, one was an optimist, one was a pessimist, and they put them in a big room full of horse manure. And the little pessimist in there looked at it, sat in the corner the whole time. They interviewed him and said, "What were you thinking?" He said, "I was in a room with horse manure." And they did the same experiment with the optimist, but that little kid saw it and jumped in there and started digging through it, climbing through, got all the horse manure all over himself. And they interviewed him and said, "What were you doing?" He said, "With all that horse manure in here, I figured there was a pony in here somewhere." And some kids are kind of that way. And if you're blessed with that sort of a child, more power to you. But the super majority are not that way. So I want to talk to you about how to get your homeschooler to hate homeschool in order to give you some insight on how to get them to love it. So homeschool is pretty simple on this one. You ready? So one way to get your child to hate homeschool, there are three pieces. The first is, if you want them to hate homeschool, all you need to do is too much. Too much time, too many hours, overwhelm them, school all day long, never get a break. We homeschooled our kids 5 hours a day. That may sound like too much to you, but then it was over. It wasn't like we're trying to do things through the whole day, so it felt like school was 9 or 10 hours when we got to things. We had a set time. If they worked hard and got it done, they got to play and do extracurricular activities, etc. afterwards. And that pace worked incredibly well for us. So that'd kind of be the first thing. If you overbear or make school too long or too big of a production or too overwhelming, sometimes that's building up their tolerance to it. If you're just starting out, you might not want to start with 5 hours, but you might start with 2. You could overwhelm them. So you grow them up. So one way kids will hate homeschool is if they feel like they're schooling all the time and having to do work and always behind. So that's one ditch, as it were. Well, you cross the road and you get in the ditch on the other side, and that's where they don't learn anything. And this is a common issue where inside of some unschooling dynamics or unschooling philosophies, kids are not actually required to learn. And so as a result, lots of these cases, they wind up going to high school or something, and they can't really read or write or do much of anything because we let them find their way. And if education is actually a skill development game, you're going to have to help them with some external disciplines so they can eventually internalize it. They're going to have to be taught to read. 20% of us will learn to read just being around it. I was one of them. I just came in reading one day as a kid. But most kids aren't that way, so you're going to have to help them along. So if you don't require them to really learn something and test it a little bit, you can raise kids who hate homeschool because it failed them and they're in trauma and trial trying to get into high school or even college and making that work. They don't know how to do it. And so those are those two ditches. Here's the third thing to do to get your child to hate homeschool. Make sure they don't develop any friends outside of the home. Make sure there's no social opportunities with clubs or youth groups or anything out there where they can meet other people that they will have shared interest with and friendship with, and learn to be social and interactive and supportive, and just learn about what friendship is. If you can make sure they don't have friends, boy, that's a good way for a child to grow up and really hate homeschool. So those are the three. You can do like too much. That'll get them to hate it. You can do too little. That'll get them to hate it. Or you can isolate them. That'll get them to hate it. So my suggestion is do the opposite. Kind of like they say about money. If you want to get rich, study what poor people do and do the opposite. Well, there's the lesson. Hope you liked it. Hey, if this is helpful, pass it along. And please subscribe if you don't belong to our channel. And we'll be back with more soon. Have a good day.